Get a Job in Tech, episode 259. You've gone through the process for getting a job. You're almost there. Now it comes time for you to negotiate a salary. Basically, you're just saying a number, right? If you're desperate, just say a number. Just say, okay, I want this, whatever it is. How much just enough to pay off the bills, essentially. That's what you're looking for. But if you're picky, then you can do these things. So you got to evaluate what you have to offer. What do you have that they want? Knowing how much value you can offer employer is important before beginning the salary negotiation. Here's a couple different factors that influence your compensation. Of course, it goes without saying, geographic location. If it's a work from home job, that's different than if it's you have to move or it's a different state. So you got to consider the cost of living in your location. You might have definitely going to have a higher salary in San Francisco than, let's say, in Kansas, like Wichita or Topeka. Definitely, because costs are just different, quite honestly. The years of experience that you have. So the job description, it says you got to have like 3 or at least 3 years, and you only have 2, or maybe it says 5 and you only have 3. Do you meet the minimum? Do you meet the higher requirements, or do you meet the minimum requirements? Usually, if the job asks for 5 years and you have 8 years, then definitely you've met that criteria. Now, leadership experience. So some companies, they like to hire people who have leadership qualities or have been in leadership roles. So if the employer prefers a leadership skills, do you meet or exceed their expectations? And this is going to help you to justify a higher pay. Definitely education experience. Of course, it's still like that. No matter what anybody tells you, even though it doesn't say you need a degree to get the job a lot of times, or if it says you need a degree but you don't have one, for some reason, companies still view it as a negotiating tactic, or they look at like, wow, you did 4 years of degree, you have a degree from a 4-year university, so that warrants a higher salary. I'm not sure why. I don't understand. Maybe it has something to do with the clout of the company, but that's their choice. So obviously, if you have a degree, a PhD, so if it's like a law firm, definitely you're gonna have to have a. And if you're, that's not a tech job, quite honestly. But why would you work at a law firm if you're a tech person? Or why would you work as a lawyer if you're a tech person? You can't. You don't have the degree. You could probably work as a paralegal, maybe. But neither here nor there. But anyway, at any rate, still in this world, a degree carries more weight when it comes to salary, definitely. Next one is career level. So, are you new in the career? Are you in your 20s, in your 30s, your 40s? There's a sweet spot there. It's usually from, say, 25 to 35, because you're still kind of in you're young enough to where they can still mold you, but you're old enough to be mature. And you're not too old enough to where they think in their mind that they can't teach you anything and you're set in your ways. That's just a flawed way of thinking. However, that's how they do it. Again, this is the market. So whatever dictates the market. So if it's a larger company, it's probably doesn't really matter. But if it's smaller, definitely they're going to go with the norms in the industry. Skills. Do you have a technical skill, or there's a niche skill, basically? So for instance, it goes without saying, if you have a CCIE, Cisco Certified Internet Network Expert, if you have a certification like that, then that's a niche job. There's only, in the whole world, maybe 80,000 people in the whole world, maybe 100,000, let's say, right? Of that, how many in the U.S. or how many live in the United States? Maybe a quarter of that, maybe 20,000, let's say. And then of that, how many of them or have been in the field a long time, and they're set in their, they're good. I won't say they're set in their ways, because obviously it's a hard thing to get, but they're set in their skill and their job. They're content. They're not looking for another job. So let's just factor in maybe 2,000 people out of 20,000. Maybe your competition is 2,000 maximum. And of that, if you give a certain area where you want to live, they don't want to move. They're most likely they live in the East Coast or West Coast, or maybe even Florida. They live there. But if you're living in Kentucky or Kansas, let's say, definitely you're going to have less competition. That's an example of a niche, like a technical niche market, or a technical niche that could give you a little leverage for your higher salary. And another thing, license or certification. So certification, obviously CCIE, let's say, or CISSP, that's another one, something like that. Definitely any certification really out there. The new hotness, right? Whatever the new hot certification is. Cybersecurity is a new thing nowadays. Not a new thing, but AWS is not a new thing, but that's definitely in high demand for out there. Then the other thing is to research the market average. So you can go to salary.com, you can go to Indeed.com salary. So it's Indeed.com/salaries, and you can look. So what's the market average of a good baseline for your salary? And what do you command? And it's just a tool that a lot of companies use. So what's the national average salary for your position? Maybe it's a generic position like sysadmin, netadmin, that's a generic term. But if it's something off the wall, then maybe you can try to justify for that or try to search for that. What's the average in your location where you're at in the cities? So again, if you're in New York City or you're in San Francisco, LA, Miami, let's say, your salaries are going to be a lot higher. Definitely New York's going to be a lot higher because of cost of living than if you're living in, say, Kentucky or Alabama, let's say, for instance. Yeah, go Roll Tide. Roll Tide there. Yeah, Roll Tide, roll. Another thing is prepare your talking points. So you're developing, you want to look at this as like a negotiating tactic. And you could probably even use it in the mirror at home. Talk to yourself, ask questions. If you believe it, they'll believe it. If you believe it and you say it, then they will believe that you believe it. And what do you feel you deserve? Why do you feel you deserve a higher salary than the one that the employer is offering? You got to ask yourself that question, because you have to really believe that. You have to really believe that. And then, a little negotiating there. Obviously, like talking points. You could even try writing like a little summary of the jobs you've had and the salaries that you've had for your own view, so you can exactly, and then write on a piece of paper. Write down that job on the piece of paper, and then put the amount that you want to get, and just pretend that's what you get now, or you're going to get from this company, and then you just keep believing. So definitely the roles. So you could talk about the achievements you have in your previous roles. You can talk about the goals you've met, maybe even the revenue you've generated for the company. And if you can use actual numbers, that's beneficial. Years of industry experience, particularly if you have more than one employer, they usually start at the minimum base or the minimum salary. So if you have you've worked for a lot of companies, let's say, and you've only worked there a year, let's say, or so, they're kind of going to feel that they're going to kind of know based on your resume. This job, help desk, let's say you only worked there a year, and then you worked at another place at help desk for a year. They're going to know that probably you started off at the low end, right? And if you only done help desk So they could probably get away with paying just a little bit higher than base salary because you've worked help desk, a couple of different jobs in help desk. Another thing is to discuss schedule time to discuss with the recruiter or the hiring manager. Definitely, you don't want to negotiate over the phone, or you don't want to negotiate over email. That's not effective to do it. You want to have a verbal exchange, and you could do it over the phone. You could do it in a video call, or you can do it in person. So you can have a back and forth conversation. They can see your mannerisms. You can express gratitude, and they can see your body language. You can see their body language and the tone as well. Like they can see that you're clearing your throat or that you're swallowing because your saliva in your mouth, you're swallowing. They can see some of those little subtle nonverbal cues that maybe you're getting nervous or you don't know. Maybe you might lose. You might walk away with not even getting the job, and they're going to know that, obviously. But if you know that ahead of time, then you know how to approach them or approach them. So type of thing, right? When negotiating a salary, let's say, having a piece of paper in front of you, right? And then have something like maybe your phone is turned off on the side, something like that. You want something to distract their eye a little bit. You can even have a couple pieces of paper with your resume onto the right there. And what you're looking to do is when you negotiate with them on your salary in person, let's say, you want to be able to look down or have something that you can look to. So you're not looking away from them. So they see that you're, like, usually if you look up or to the left or whatever, they can tell that you're not sure, insecure, those type of things, or not sure about what you're saying, and you're not sure, so you're just trying to say something not to lose face. But if you have a piece of paper like a resume or something, little notes write down, you can occasionally just look down at those notes, and it really guides you, so you're more clear and concise than if you just talk off the top of your head, because you may say something, you may want to fill the gap, fill the quiet space with something. But if you have a piece of paper right there, you can hit on the piece of paper. It says, "Oh yes, talk about this. These are the type of things I want to hit on," and you go back to it. And then when they talk about things, or maybe they bring up things, you can write that down as well. So let's say, for instance, they're going to negotiating side. You want 100,000, let's say, and they want to give you 95,000 or 90. Let's say 90,000, and so doing your math, have it already line up ready, and you have basically some notes on a piece of paper that note the minimum amount. Like you factor in your bills, you factor in these type of things, you factor in maybe the salary report, put that in there, average salary for this location, blah, blah, blah. And then you have a number, you have a range. Now, write the range down that's higher. Write it from 100 to 110, basically. That's what you put down. And then when they come with the 90, you can say, well, this is based on, this is what I want to, based on the market, my skill set. This is what the market's saying. This is the market saying that I'm worth. And then usually what you can do also is you can complement it with some sort of benefits, non-money benefits. Let's say, for instance, training. So to get that number closer from $90,000 to $100,000, you can say, like, well, let's talk about training. Let's talk about some certification courses. Let's talk about some conventions I can go to. It's like a tech convention, essentially, like VMware World. That's an example of the convention you can go to. Travel, maybe a work from home opportunity, something like that, where really, to do this correctly, you have to know about the company. If this company is in the travel industry, maybe that that they have, or let's say, for instance, is an airline. Definitely, that's an airline. Now what you have is you can bargain. You can negotiate a little bit, right? For instance, if it's a non-travel job and it's an airline you're applying for, There you go. Now you can negotiate. Instead of getting 100,000, you're going to get 90,000, but you're going to get some travel time. Maybe you have, let's say, one trip a month or something like that. One trip, 1 week in a month, you get to go fly coach with you and your family or something like that to a location. Maybe it's Florida. Maybe you live in Wichita or Kansas or Kentucky or wherever, and you want to go to Florida, Miami, you want to go to Orlando, whatever, once a month. You got that. You can negotiate that. Maybe it's a cruise line. Definitely. You just got to know what the company is, how you can get some benefits out there. If you know, like if it's a big conglomerate and they own little small companies, let's say they own bakeries, or they own steakhouses, you can negotiate for steak. You can get some sort of thing where negotiate where it's free food, if you will. Maybe it's a extremely discounted rate for beef, Omaha beef. You've heard of them? Yeah, definitely something like that. Or it's a company that has drinks. They have like juice drinks, something like that. You work for them or the subsidiary or something like that of the company. Anything, be creative like that. Anything you can do for that. Negotiate for a phone. Definitely negotiate for a phone. Anything you can. It's the same thing. You just want to get that number to closest to 100,000 as you can, right? If they're a company and they have football tickets to any, like say they have Alabama tickets to college football, season tickets to college football, Alabama, let's say, negotiate for that. Or you go down during the season, you go maybe once a month, you go to a game, definitely in Alabama. Yeah, definitely. In anything, we could do that. If you have another thing, if you have a friend, you can rehearse this with a trusted friend, and definitely be confident. Lead gratitude. The first thing out of your mouth is, "I really appreciate your confidence in me, and I appreciate that you've reached out to me with a job offer, and I hope that we can move this forward." Maybe don't say that. Say something like, "I appreciate the time you've taken, you've invested in this process, and I really like to make this happen." Something like that. You're trying to be courteous, you're trying to be cautious, but you want to definitely you will lead with gratitude, essentially. And I already talked about it, but ask for your top of your range, your high end. Whatever your high end, go for that first, and then come down. Whatever you think you can get, don't go for your low end. Go with the high end, and then come down. And I already talked about job-related expenses. So, for instance, if it's a company, I'll hit on this a little bit. If it's a company they want to move you, they can definitely. A lot of companies can do that if they want to hire you, of course. Like back in the day, semiconductor industry used to pay for relocation. So they'd relocate you, your car, your household goods. They put you up in corporate housing for a month or 2 months or 3 months and give you a company car, like rent you a company car essentially, until you got settled in. It usually was like 2 months. You had 2 months to do it, to find your own place and all that. Definitely you can do that. Now, the difference being is if you leave the company for whatever reason, there may be some costs that you have to pay back for that. But if they let you go, then you don't. One of those type of things. That's the type of company those type of companies, because in the semiconductor industry, the profit is so high. It's so high. You're just a small amount of money to them. So in the semiconductor industry is a tool. Like let's say, you're engineer of a tool. A tool is a thing that makes chips or makes chips essentially. They put the wafers in and the machine. It does a PECVD, does copper deposition. It goes lithography, whatever it does. And your job is just to bring up the tool, maybe do an R&D on it, and then eventually put it in high value manufacturing. So that tool is running constantly, 24/7, and you're only down maintenance a short amount of time. So what they do is they sell tools to like companies, small companies or larger companies, $1 billion companies. They sell tools to like Intel, for example. They usually don't make their own chips. They have other companies come in and make the chips, but Intel buys it from them. They buy the process from them. They design it, but another company makes the chips for them essentially. And then those companies have people that are quote unquote contractors that work for Intel, if you will. They work for that company, but they're there to, like Lam Research is a company, Applied Materials is a company. So Applied Materials have their own people come there and maintain the machine and then be part of the process. And they might make 100,000, let's say, or 200,000, let's say, for that type of role. Now, if they're spinning out wafers 24/7, very small amount of money. And then the company themselves, like Applied Materials, they're charging the company Intel, let's say $5 million for like a 2-year contract, let's say, for that. That covers, that's $5 million for the tool, plus the employees for 2 years. And then any additional costs, like if they have to do maintenance on it, that's extra. So the company can charge Intel extra money beyond that $5 million. And to Intel, they like, oh, fine, good. That's a drop in the bucket for us. So that's the whole reason, because the company's able to charge Intel, and the company's like, hey, we're going to get back this money if we relocate these people here. That's how they do it. If you've ever heard of the story about the Traitorous Eight, or how Intel was founded, if you will. So Robert Noyce and Andy Grove, is that right? I think that's right. And then Gordon Moore. So they worked at, well, I'll just talk about Robert Noyce. He worked at Philco, and then he came to work for William Shockley, and then they left and went for, not Varian Semiconductor, Shockley Semiconductor? No, that's not right. Fairchild Semiconductor, right. Fairchild Semiconductor. Traitorous Eight. So 8 people started Fairchild. Arthur Rock was the person that kind of got that happen. Anyway, Robert Noyce, Gordon Moore, and Andy Moria, I think his name is, all started Intel. And Intel, so Robert Noyce is the reason why we have the cubicles, because he wanted the dynamic of that is to have everybody is kind of the same. Oh, you're having a cubicle, a big office, because when he worked at Philco, based on your title there, you would have certain furniture in your office, and you had certain dress codes and all, just like IBM back in the day, no different. So he wanted to get away from that, more loose, more of a freeing, more of a easier going, sharing kind of work atmosphere. He really started the movement, actually, as far as easy IT work is concerned, even though it's semiconductor industry. Profit sharing, all that, 401k. He didn't start 401k, but he got that ball rolling. He was the quote unquote godfather of Silicon Valley. So people came to him. They had something they wanted to do something. They needed funding back in the day. He would bless it essentially and say, yeah, it's a good idea or not. Steve Jobs would go to him after he worked at Next, and then he went back to Apple with those new ideas. Because he'd been mentored by Robert Noyce. Yeah, so that's why, like Intel doesn't mind. They don't mind paying for someone because they're going to get their money back. Definitely prepare for questions, tough questions. So they may hit you back with why this, why that, because they're going to do the research on you as well, or the market, I should say. So you should know ahead of time. Basically, they might just be testing you, and they may say they might ask you, are we your top company? Are are we the company that you want to work for? Are we your top pick? You may say yes or no. You should say yes, of course. And they might ask, if we come up with the salary, will you accept the position immediately? And they want to hear verbal yes or no. And you have to be ready for that. You have to know the numbers. You have to be ready to say yes. Can't be afraid. You have to really know the numbers. What you want. And you can think of it as this could be a 1 or 2 year or 5-year type of job for you. You know, look at it that way. And definitely, and be flexible, of course, right? You can ask for like stock options. This goes back to negotiating. You can ask for more stock options. Like if you're at a FANG company, you can get more stock options. That's how their salary is higher. In case you don't know, they have like $500,000 a year. Well, a lot of that's in stock options or vesting, if you will. So they don't get that until after a couple of years of working there. Sign-on bonus, you can ask for that as well. A lot of these you may not, the kind of job back in the day you could see this type of stuff, but the more competition you have, the less you can ask for these things, unless you're in a niche you're in a niche job or niche market essentially. And definitely ask questions like, what is the budget for this position based on? What information do you need for me to make the decision? Are there any other negotiables available besides salary? And by all means, don't be afraid to walk away. Now, your email, how you email them, don't email, of course, right? Don't email them asking for negotiation. Definitely don't do that. I do it over the phone. So these are just some type of things you can look out for and negotiate your salary. Good luck with your job search. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next one.